Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, sixers of all shapes and sizes, welcome back to episode 39, or 93, of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, September 27th, 2021. I'm Bill, and I'm joined, as always, by my versatile co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome.
Yes, we are versatile.
Hello, helps if my mic is on. It's gonna help a lot.
That is a good ability, is to turn on your audio.
Mm-hmm.
I've been looking into it, and that checks out.
That's Jordan's superpower, is turning on his microphone.
It's a lame one,
mundane,
but we deal
it's useful
with it.
when you're. It's mundane, but it's useful when you're a streamer.
Yeah.
Oh man! Just as a reminder, the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is not a spoiler-free podcast. Of course, normally that would mean if there's something in the Cosmere, you would want to go check it out before you come back. This is a different situation. We are finishing up our discussion of what we have currently in the Reckoners series. We already talked about Steelheart, Firefight, and Calamity, but now we're talking about Lux, which was the surprise book 4 that came out a couple months ago, available only in audiobook, and actually the first one of the Reckoners that Brandon has written with a co-author. This was written with Steven Michael Bohls, and if you want to hear our discussions on all the books in the original trilogy, then check out our previous episodes titled This Does Not Spark Joy, Gnocchi Incident, and We'll Pay You in Exposure. For those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, we do want to remind you it's possible for our listeners to interact with us live via chat as we record each episode at www.twitch.tv/InkeepersTable. We record episodes of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, so please join us, take part in the discussion, and just join us. Be part of the show. You know, you can actually, if you have interesting comments, you could shape the discussion. That power is in your hands.
Thank you, Captain Planet.
You're welcome. We are talking superheroes, right? So,
yeah, it's sort of fitting, yeah.
And he's a hero. I heard he's going to take pollution down to 0.
Wow.
Now the song is starting to go through my head.
We
now that I
could
can
help him
remember
put
the words.
asunder bad guys who like to
loot.
I don't know what they like to do. That sounds like a good thing. Anyway, 90s random cartoons aside, the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is made possible by the support of our listeners and patrons. The show will, of course, continue to be free, but if you want to help us out, head on over to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. Patrons get immediate access to our Discord channel where you can talk about the show and the Cosmere with other listeners. We've got a great community. We've got a lot of great discussions. We talk about everything. Like, seriously, it's just
everything.
No, not everything. There are a few things that we've actually nixed, but we talk about a wide array of topics, and you'll also get early access to bonus episodes, exclusive access to other bonus content, and other really, really good stuff. But now let's talk about Lux specifically. Mm-hmm. That's what this conversation is about.
Allegedly.
Okay, so first off, based on the name, I actually was thinking that Lux was going to be Vegas. Just because I heard Lux and I think Luxor.
Or luxury, or, just any of those kind of things, yeah.
Well, Lux is literally Latin for light.
Right.
And
instead,
I expected a city
Texas,
of light,
obviously.
yeah. And instead, it's a city that floats. And I'm just like, this. But then again, we've already covered the fact that epics are not good at naming things. So really, we shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Although I'll grant Life Force, his name makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. We'll get to that in just a second. So this book, as I mentioned earlier, it's only available in audiobook. It's an Audible original. It was produced by Brandon's company, Mainframe. So I don't know
name.
exactly where Mainframe fits under the Dragonsteel umbrella, or if it's a separate entity or what.
So
but it basically focuses on it's a production company.
Yeah, my understanding is that it is a it's a subsidiary.
Okay, that's sort of what I assumed, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's I can't confirm that for certain, so please don't quote us on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want someone putting that in the copper mind being like, as said on the Sandersonian
SICS.
Institute.
Yes.
And then people come and just like totally destroy us in the comment sections.
I was glad that I looked at the Coppermind and it said that originally this was supposed to be 3 books and they decided to make it 1. So I was like, okay, well, at least we know this is the ending of this particular story.
Except that ending, that's not the ending.
I
like
know,
that, there's more to the story.
hurts.
There's
It
clearly
hurts.
more to the story. But again, we will get to that first.
Yeah.
We have a brand new cast. So yes, this is the Reckoners. This is not.
This
Cody
is a
and
Reckoners.
Abraham and David and
Megan and everything.
and all of them. Prof makes an appearance,
Yeah.
but that's really the majority of the overlap that we get. Other than the fact that there are epics. Oh, and there's a mention of obliteration because he destroyed our main
City in
character's
Texas, yeah.
home. So the main
Which was
character,
considered
sort
rude.
of the quote David of this book, I guess you could say, but he's very different from David. His name is Jax. I'm assuming that's short for Jackson,
Yeah.
but
Probably.
but yeah. So he was orphaned when obliteration went nuclear in Houston, which of course was talked about in the other books. And he was with his brother Dan in Boston, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and because his brother was at college and he was
Yeah.
there for his spring break, I think is what it
Yeah,
was.
and so they're hanging out and playing Civil War in the house because his brother's a history buff, and then everything goes crazy and Lovestruck just starts murdering people and flirts his brother to death by blowing a kiss at him and reversing the flow of blood in his entire body.
Which is also considered
That-
rude.
There are some epic powers when you look at him. You're just like, Brandon,
That's brutal.
you're sick.
That's just.
How do you think of now? I noticed. Did either of y'all feel like this one was a lot darker?
Oh yes,
than the
and I mean,
others?
I think I hadn't listened to any of the other ones, and so hearing the emotion in the voices and stuff added just that extra oomph to it with every tragic thing that happened in the book too.
Yeah. So I don't know if the darkness was just it's Brandon wanting it to be a darker story or adding stuff in, or if it's the influence of his co-author Steven Michael Bohls.
We don't know, yeah.
Which, by the way, last time I promised you I would come back with his co-author's name. That's it. So, promise fulfilled. But, yeah, it's rough. I mean, like, Jax's time at the coop, it's harsh.
It is so harsh.
And it's not like Disney harsh. It's harsh.
But it makes him insane. Like, if I could have David or Jax, I would take Jax in a heartbeat because he knows what he's doing in, like, every way, pretty much.
Yeah, Jax is a lot scarier
Oh, yes.
than David.
Well,
Particularly because even though David, because David's main contribution to the team is his willingness to sort of go off book and his deep knowledge of epics.
Yeah.
Jax has got both of those.
And he's techie, and he can, like, just go off the cuff and go off. He just does stuff on the fly, and it works, like, most of the time.
It's interesting because you would think with all of the stuff he can do that he would feel Mary Sue.
Gary, I think it's usually
But-
Gary Stu when they do Guy, but anyway, it's okay. Go ahead.
The Mary Sue is the overarching thing. Gary Stu is a later addition. That's not the
Yes.
discussion we're having right now. But no, see, it feels like he's earned it in this book.
Yeah, I mean, you spend a lot of time in the coop with him, and so you see how brutal it is and how much he just pushes himself and gets pushed.
Yeah.
For me, it's kind of an issue for me with the book is that we do spend a long time earning him and Paige's skills. The training entire setup with them and Zeph is so well done that in comparison, once we get out of the coop, it feels like we just hit the gas pedal and it's go, go, go the rest of the story. And I'm like, I feel like we needed to spend just a little bit more time.
I absolutely agree. And, well, because it feels like it's 2 books. Because there's, like, 2 books smashed together. Because the Coop feels like it's a whole story. And then there's everything else, which, because he's so isolated in the Coop, and he and Paige are so isolated, and then with the other stuff, he's separated from Paige for a lot of the stuff at the beginning. It feels just very, very separate.
Yeah.
Which, that could be seen as a plus or a minus. It's just, but it feels a little bit disconnected.
What kind of got me was it felt like there were like several large climaxes where things, like where this attempt almost worked and this attempt almost worked. And I know that's part of the normal hero's journey and adventure novels and things like that, is that you have to have all these failures.
Cycle.
Yeah, that tri-fail cycle. That's right. Anyway, but like they felt so dynamic, and just I kept looking at my phone and going, "We still have 5 hours left? What's going to happen in 5 hours?" Because I kept thinking, okay, well, this is the final confrontation. Nope. Okay, this is the final. Nope. And it just kept going.
Mm-hmm. Like, in some ways, I almost feel like the book should have ended when Paige takes off her mask.
The mask?
Yeah.
And then the next book is, in other words, this book should have been called, like Wing Flare. The next book should have been Lux.
Well, and it was interesting. Speaking of that moment, I wasn't sure for a while whether Paige was genuine or if there was something else, or if she'd been, I was just like, is this another Megan situation where she's a plant? Or like, I wasn't. And I was like, if that's the case, I'm actually going to be a little bit mad. So I'm glad it didn't turn out that way. But with the reveal, I was just like, I was thinking it's hey, by the way, I've been with them the whole time.
Yeah. I was surprised by Brigand, though. I shouldn't have been.
I saw Brigand coming, actually.
I was angry about that.
See, I felt bad for him.
I did too.
Oh, yes.
Like, just because it's what they treat him like. It's like he said he wanted to quit. No one listened to him.
Honestly, I was surprised that they made him come. Like,
because
that he came. I was just like, he wants to quit. Let him quit now. Now is the time to let him quit.
You don't want someone whose heart is only halfway in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you're going in this hard and this deep into a crazy situation, just if they're not fully committed, don't bring them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't be halfway when you're going. I mean, they went into the belly of the beast.
Mm-hmm.
And what a beast it is.
Oh, man.
Okay, so we've got Jack. Just looking at our cast of characters, we've got Jax, we've got Paige, who we didn't talk about. Paige, she came in a couple years after Jax has been there.
Yeah.
And was it really that long?
It's 2 years.
Yeah,
man,
it's about 2 years. He spends like 4 or 5 years. He spends like 6 years at the Coop, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, because remember, it starts
when he's like 11.
Several years before Steelheart.
Yeah, because it's the very beginning of when epics show up.
Mm-hmm. Because I believe Steelheart, I'm trying to think, how long after Calamity was?
I think
it was like 10 years, wasn't it?
Because
I thought it was 1 year.
No.
In
Steelheart.
In the book. Okay.
How long after the Calamity was it? Because he was a kid, like he was.
Yeah, he was like 8, and then he's like 16 or 17 when the book is really going.
I think he's 17.
So yeah, somewhere
17. Okay,
somewhere between 8 and 10 years.
And so this is sort of right. He gets to the Coop right at the very beginning of that, and most of this is going on before the fall of Steelheart. At one point, we hear that that Prof has disappeared because he went to New York, to Manhattan.
They don't even.
But
know
everything
where
was great after that. So.
I was just surprised that I kept waiting for them to go and try and find other Reckoner bases when they were doing that, and find that they'd been wiped out, or that Prof was there killing everybody.
I was thinking there was going to be a little bit more crossover like that.
Yeah, but they didn't. I'm like, that's okay. I mean, people probably moved, or he didn't worry about that, or whatever. But
I was perfectly comfortable not dealing with that.
And then we've got Zeph. Okay, Zeph, particularly with McLeod Andrews' performance of
I
Zeph,
love Zeph.
was amazing.
I love
He was a
Zeph.
fascinating character.
I
Because you can...
just love the sound of his voice. Like, it had
Oh, yeah.
this... It sounded like he always had, like, mashed potatoes in his mouth or something.
Well, what it sounded like was, honestly, somebody who's been chewing tobacco for most of his life.
Yeah. Which, being from Texas, I totally believe it.
Yeah, and like he feels like that, just very, very...
Rough and gruff and everything.
Yeah, that old Texan.
Yeah. I need to get to one core complaint I have about this book, and it's right at the beginning.
Okay.
So they go to Arlington, Texas. Arlington, Texas is nearby where I grew up. It's right in between Dallas and Fort Worth, thus making it the ideal point to put a lot of attractions. It's where there is Dallas Cowboys football stadium. It's where there's the Texas Rangers baseball stadium. It's where Six Flags Over Texas is, Wet and Wild. There's all these cool locations. And I'm like, when they start the book off in Arlington, I'm like, is this going to be like Steelheart? We're going to fight at the Cowboy Stadium? Or no. It'll be cooler if it's at Six Flags Over Texas. A fight at a freaking theme park? Like they're staked out on these things. And we promptly do nothing with it. And so I'm just sitting here the entire time. I'm like, do it! Do the thing! It's right there!
It's all off screen.
It drove me so insane. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I know it's not the actual thing, but come on!
Speaking of, that was one of the things I found really interesting about this book. There were a lot more product names, like brand names used. You noticed that too?
Yeah, because they use several building names.
They talk about the Snickers.
Yeah,
They
the
talk
Snickers
about,
bars.
Target. They talk about like all these different.
Can't remember one of the banks where because one of the banks
Wells
was
Fargo.
where, yeah.
I did find it interesting that like Target was part of the origin of the big bad, and I was like, but I love Target.
And I thought Target was the one with the happy employees.
Well, no, I know they're not all happy, but it's just like, man, it's sad.
There are no happy employees during Black Friday.
Oh no, I don't go on Black Friday because I went like once, and no, thank you.
But speaking of unhappy underlings, so Zeph. Zeph's way of training was just so harsh. But it was effective.
And Jax was his guinea pig. Like it sounds like he'd never taught a kid that young. He's like, you're dropping off what with me? He's like, no, I do like people who already are grown up, not 11-year-old kid.
But it's really interesting the way he works with them, because it's the kind of thing he was testing Jax's mettle, and Jax rose to the challenge by giving him every single reason to quit.
Yeah.
And so Jax rose to this challenge. He's like, no, I'm not going to quit. To the point where he doesn't want Zeph to have any reason to call him out or punish him. So he reads all of these books, like these
Even though
deep, heavy scientific books.
Books on biology.
So that he could, huh?
Books on biology.
Well, and like there's like physics and stuff as well.
Oh yeah,
there?
it's like
Yeah.
And
it's
just
theoretical
like
stuff
heavy stuff, and he reads all of them. Now, it's really interesting because obviously he can't just read them and know everything. But first off, he's really, really, really motivated.
Yeah.
Which is funny because he makes motivators. But also, he learns enough that he can get into the practical side of it and start learning with his hands. It is a little bit beyond what we would expect. In a sense, he's kind of the Batman of this world, it feels like.
Yeah.
because
see
he
that.
trains himself to become physical. He trains his mind. And so he's just sort of Batmaning himself.
Yeah, I like that comparison because it's definitely one of those things where if it weren't for the fact he spent so long there and he really applied himself, and we saw how much he had to earn, I wouldn't buy, because even Paige, like, okay, Paige is supposed to be what when they attack Lux, a 15-year-old girl. Was that about her age? Or were they
I thought she was about the same age.
I think she's 17.
Okay, 17. So 17-year-old girl, and she goes up against just Raven after Raven, with only a sword, and is somehow able to win. And it's like, I wouldn't believe this unless we went through
all the stuff in the coop.
Yeah, everything in the coop. And so it was just one of those, it belabors or beggars belief, but we'll give it to you because you made sure that you earned it.
Yeah, it was really interesting though with Zeph's training methods, because when Prof comes back to visit the coop and check up on everything, his response is that that boy's a prodigy.
Yeah, he's a genius.
And Jax is listening, and he's thinking, oh no, he's going to tell him how horrible I am, and that's when it just sort of dawns on Jax, this is what's been going on. He's been pushing me not because I'm a failure, but because he sees potential.
He wants to see how far he can get me to go, to be over and above.
And you actually see his relationship with but the relationship between Zeph and Jax completely changes at that point.
Yeah.
Because Jax recognizes, oh, Zeph respects me. And Zeph is like, okay, he knows, and now it's time to let him know. And it's a really interesting way the dynamics shift. But the other thing about the way he trains them is how he motivates each of them. Because suddenly it's not just, Jax, you do something I don't like and I'm going to punish you drastically. It's Paige is the one who suffers for your mistakes and you suffer for hers.
Yep.
And suddenly that makes them train all the harder.
And I think it kind of helps that he's already kind of toughened when Paige gets there. And so when she's making all these mistakes because she's fresh and new at it, that it bugs him less than it probably hurts her whenever he makes a mistake.
Yes.
So I also liked when it was revealed that, Zeph found out that he'd overheard him, and he's like, well, should I be upset that you did all of these things that I trained you to do? No. It's kind of like, you did everything I trained you to do. Why should I be upset about this?
I also liked when he realizes that Zeph
planted the stuff that he needed.
You thought I would have that random thing there? Yeah.
It's a good thing you took such good notes because I knew exactly what to get you. But I like that he didn't just get it for him. He made him
work for
get it himself. It was such an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
And it was well woven together, I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of thing that's really easy to do bad.
The coup was excellent in its execution.
Honestly, I think the coup was my favorite part of the book.
Yeah, same here.
I have a hard time picking my favorite because I liked a lot of the action scenes at the end, but there was also just a lot more tension that just got to me after a while because there was so much. But yeah, I really did like the coup too.
Yeah.
All that fighting and
and almost dying, and this person does die, and just
everything
in that. You've got everything figured out.
It was just the fact that everything was a freaking Jenga tower in Lux, where every epic needed the other epic for some reason, and they all have this uneasy truce because they're all insane, and. Wing Flare in particular is one of the more insane ones we've seen so
creepy.
far.
Oh, she's so messed up.
And
again, McLeod Andrews' performance for her was just horrifying.
Yeah.
in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I to me, she's like, they just said, what if we just made the Dark Phoenix? And because she has that level of telekinesis. Like when he blows apart the room and then he turns around and then it's all
there.
like it's all back together and she just pieced all the shards back. It's just like, what the crap am I doing fighting this thing?
Well,
This thing, yeah.
And then when we see Life Force use her abilities, it takes a lot out. It's just one of those, oh wow, she was juggling all. There was something extra to what she was doing.
And let alone he's like, I can't sleep. How could I sleep and try and keep this up? Yeah. Which just makes him go crazy faster.
Then we got Herschel. So
Poor Herschel.
Herschel is another sort of old school Texan, but less of a. I'm trying to think of the best way. He's not Zeph.
No.
He's more of your cowboy. You know.
He's less
Like,
curmudgeon.
Yes.
Yeah, it took seeing the his backstory scene where you finally find out how he loses his leg for me to go, okay, it definitely pinpoints why he doesn't ever want to take command. It doesn't lay out and say, well, he never wants to take command because X, but you can understand why he doesn't ever want to be in charge ever again.
Okay, now that you've brought it up, let's talk about that backstory scene.
Oh, man. That was...
I was a little bit
Crazy.
bothered by it because it didn't mesh up with Steelheart.
Yeah.
Like the character that became Steelheart did not mesh.
Are you sure he was Steelheart, though?
Yeah.
He says my heart is made of stronger stuff. It is steel. He turns everything around him to steel. He fires energy. He's Steelheart.
His last name was Jackson. That was Steelheart's name.
Okay. See, I wasn't 100% sure on if it was
was
Steelheart.
him. It's so as someone who has read a lot of comic books. Comic books do this a lot, where they'll throw in a backstory that's really cool, but as you actually examine it, you're like, wait, this actually doesn't fit with the timeline. And I personally feel, because you can make this fit with the timeline as far as like the actual events of the story, they could happen. But the thing that bothers me the most is the idea that here's Herschel, who is a reckoner. He was at the birth of one of the biggest epics in the world, and he didn't tell any of the lorists?
Well,
So here's my suspicion. First off, for me, it's a bigger deal because Jackson. It's clear that Steelheart was a bully beforehand. Jackson didn't strike me as that. He actually struck me as genuine based on the way his character was described. My thought, I can't remember if you're the one who brought this up or if this is something that came up on my own. My thought is that this is one of Megan's other realities.
I didn't bring that up, and
Okay.
there's been no indications of that. I've actually I've seen this firsthand. I've seen people who were jerks when they were kids and were bullies, and one of my uncles was like this. He was a problem child, and then he got into the military, and the military gives them a sense of purpose, and because a lot of bullies, it comes from insecurities of not belonging. And so they strike out. And so they get a way to belong. And so for a lot of them, the military does sort of finally socialize them in a way that they haven't had. So it can make... Again, it's just... This can make sense story-wise. It's just more the fact that it doesn't make sense that it just doesn't make sense for Herschel to not
tell anybody.
Not tell anybody.
I wonder, it's either if he didn't tell anybody, or just it's either because he didn't connect the dots, or he was too ashamed of it, or no one asked him and he didn't. I guess that goes
He's
with connecting the
disconnected
dots.
enough from the outside world that he
doesn't realize, because I mean, how many lorists are probably going to ask Herschel, who's the munitions
I feel like
and blow
someone
'em up
who
guy.
has been a Reckoner for this long would go out of his way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I wonder if there's a little bit of shame involved in that too.
Oh, that's the best,
not volunteer
explanation for it. It's just, for me, I just can't buy that he wouldn't. Like, that feels to me like something he'd swallow his pride on, because it's too mission critical.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I was just guessing on that.
Yeah, no, you're trying to make it make sense, because that's what we do.
But I mean, it's also, even with his backstory, it wouldn't make it obvious that his weakness was someone who's not scared of him. Mm-hmm. So the
one thing that was really cool about the flashback, though, is it's the first time we ever actually saw somebody turn for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, it's the first time we actually saw somebody...
Well, except for Prof.
For the first time.
Oh, you meant turn as in getting their powers,
like
not turn
when
evil.
When Calamity first shows up and everything.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
And in getting powers and in the going bad, because...
Yeah, because we saw David almost doing that. Mm-hmm. Or not David.
Well, I mean, we saw...
David. Sorry.
David, yes.
David Charleston. Well, we did see him at the very end of Calamity, where he turns the space station to steel again, and the glass space station. But what I'm talking about is this is the first time we saw... This is the first look we've gotten at the event where people became epics.
Yeah.
Because before that, nobody knew about epics. There weren't any epics.
It was just this weird star in the sky, yeah.
This is the first flashback we've gotten to the day when Calamity shone bright and the epics came.
I did like, it was really creepy to see when he's blowing up the building and Herschel's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Plan B. You wanted me to blow it up, so I blew it up." Yeah. And it's
solving a problem.
It's just, you see this mental shift.
Mm-hmm. That he doesn't connect with, I just shot my friend over here and teammate, as well as doing all that.
He's become, like, you see him shift into this sociopath, where he doesn't recognize what you're doing is an atrocity.
Yeah.
He's perfectly fine with it.
Yeah. What do y'all think of Herschel and Jax's bucket book?
I love the bucket book.
I did like it. I was like, man, how do you get that many items? I mean, okay, sure, that can happen, but just, it blows my mind that they end up with like 400 at the end of it.
There's a lot of downtime when they're waiting around for things to happen.
And that's the thing. It feels like it's at the very beginning. It feels like it's been around for a lot longer than it has when we actually see it come about. It's like, I feel like the gap between that and everything and the actual event happening is a lot shorter than I would have expected based on that. Mm-hmm. That said, I do love that they try and cram stuff in. He's just like, beat a bear without a gun or blade.
It's like, well, come on, you're the bear. Obviously, it works, right?
Just like, and I love how he's just like, I don't like it,
but I'll give it to you. Fine.
But you're tying logic in knots, so fine, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, and then he refuses to let it tie. Herschel's like, "No, I'm not gonna go out with it being a tie."
Yeah,
that's a tie. That's madness. A tie.
Well, and that's why I love that his logic of, okay, in the bucket book is survive Lux. That way, if one of us dies, then it doesn't end on a tie.
Tie, but then they both survive. So yeah.
Of course, if they both die, it's still a tie. But
don't focus on that.
What? So that's the motivation not to die. But yeah. So Herschel's just this old cowboy type with a wooden leg.
The other thing
that he keeps everything in.
It's a metal leg.
I did like as well with Herschel. Prosthetic. I liked seeing a very harsh man, because we saw he was perfectly willing to torture people, just because that was something we never saw really with the other Reckoner crew.
They were all idealists.
Yeah, and I liked that.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be part of the group. There's going to be some reckoner out there who is going to be like Herschel, who's going to go, well, let's do it.
I mean, they live in a harsh world.
Yes.
He's, there's got to be...
And they've survived a long time in that harsh world.
And they recruit very specific kinds of people.
Right.
And
he already had the training.
Yeah, you're going to get a few of those people who, play a little loose and fast with morality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the name of the Russian guy or whatever he was called?
Parik.
Does it feel to anyone else like he out of nowhere sort of started twirling a mustache?
Oh, the
I wouldn't
Californian?
say out of nowhere. He, you know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of, and I can't remember the character's name, but in Gargoyles, Tim Curry, his character.
Oh, the evil doctor.
The Dr. Zhivago guy.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Californian, right?
Yes, the Californian.
Californian,
okay.
but he was originally from claimed to be
Somewhere.
from the Russian branch or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, the European. I don't remember exactly
He
where.
wasn't a reckoner, so.
Yeah.
But, no, he felt very much, I'm doing this for science,
Yeah.
Because he's not an epic, so he doesn't have that excuse. He's just a sort of messed
Creepy.
up guy.
Yeah.
No, he's perfectly willing to be the evil overlord.
But yeah.
Never trust a man who's willing to be a toady.
Yeah. But back to some of the leaders. Abigail. Okay, this threw me off a bit.
There's two Abigails.
It started off early enough that I was wondering if this was Abigail Reed, who becomes Regalia.
Yes.
I didn't think. I mean, because she fought off being an epic or being going evil for a while, and so I'm just like, is this her? Are we going to see Regalia becoming Regalia? But it wasn't. It was a completely different Abigail. So I got a little bit thrown by that.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, because of I read through all of Lux first, and then we decided to do this. So I had completely forgotten when I first went through Lux.
When you were going through Lux, yeah.
Yeah, and so I had the reverse, that when we got to which
Firefight.
Firefight, I had a moment of, wait a second. No, that's not it. That's
No, other Abigail.
Right. Man, her death was just,
ugh.
Oh.
gosh.
So many
As soon
gut
as-
punches this book.
I know, like when it was down in there and he's going, well, you're the one who were doing the killing, and like that's when it started to click in my head that I was like, oh no. Like I got it like 5 or 10 minutes before Jax did that. I was like, he's not healing himself. He's sucking
Yeah.
it away. I was like, that's got to be what it is. Otherwise,
He's
why would you
taking
have all these
their
people
life
trapped?
force.
Yeah.
Life force
brutal.
was so messed up.
I love this concept though for a villain. I've never seen the evil healer before.
I know, it's creepy.
Well, and the fact that he uses it on other people as well.
Yeah.
And
Well,
what he
'cause-
does with the ravens too, like with like, you are going to die if I die. I'm guaranteeing it. That's just hates it.
Well,
Yeah.
it goes back to the whole Jenga tower that he's built. The whole point of it is to just invoke that whole mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's as a concept of trying to be the evil overlord, it's very well set up.
Yeah. Life Force as a villain was just, he was an incredible villain.
Yeah, I do wonder how much of how evil he was. Like he's going to be evil, but I wonder how much Deathrise
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
messed with him too. I'm sure that amped up
So
all the
that's-
evil because like he
okay.
keeps talking about the
We
demon.
still don't know,
you know
what Deathrise is.
Yeah,
I know,
so
and it's
this is
freaky.
so part of my issue a lot in this book was the fact that I'm sitting here and I'm like, well, wait a minute, that's not how gifting is supposed to work. Because like the entire time, what was his name? Conflux. He talked about how he couldn't gift to other epics, and Prof had issue gifting to other epics.
Oh yeah.
and the issue is it's supposed to be inconsistent, and it's like, okay, I get that part, but because like Megan could get the shields, but she couldn't get the healing from Prof,
And she couldn't use the tensors or something.
yeah, she
Right.
couldn't use the tensors, and so it's like, okay, it's inconsistent. I can follow that, but he magically can gift to every single epic that he has in Lux, implying
The difference
it must be Deathrise. Something does that.
the difference being that there's like some sort of transfer of essence, I believe, that he uses.
Because
like,
he gets the blood from people and he
Yeah.
uses it that way. And I'm guessing he got Deathrise from somebody,
That's
and
an
Deathrise got put into him because Deathrise
that's how
got
he
put
gives it
into
to-
Paige. So I'm guessing that he killed Deathrise or killed the person who had killed Deathrise or something like that, and so then it got put into him.
That's an interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering where. I mean, we don't know the origin of Deathrise, but I'm guessing that that's how it is that Deathrise is insisting that, oh, I need to survive, so I'm going to make sure I get transferred if and when this happens.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting is that he turns his ability to heal into a grafting a way to graft other Epic's abilities into himself. It kind of reminds me of that episode of The Simpsons. It's a Halloween episode where Dr. Frank starts like attaching other people's body parts to himself.
Oh, man.
Ivan.
Where he like Frankensteins himself, and that's kind of what it feels like Life Force is doing, is Frankensteining himself into. He's like Sylar from
He
from
is.
Heroes.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah,
Oh,
I made
she's
that
messed
connection
up.
as well, but it's just the concept of, because when we first hear about him and we know that he's a healer, and we know especially through our experiences with our good friends in the other Reckoners books that he's a gifter of some kind, and
Right.
the gifting that he
supposedly all epics are actually gifters. I think we find out at the end of.
no, not all epics are gifters. All epics are gifted their powers.
I could have sworn.
I don't remember seeing anything about them being gifters.
Okay,
No,
maybe
yeah,
I'm remembering that long.
Yeah, no, it's the other way around. All their powers are gifted to them.
By Calamity, right?
Yeah, but anyway, the thing that was so interesting about him though was the simple fact that because we know he's a healer, but we don't know we didn't know he was a gifter at the start. We just knew that the ravens always rise, and so you didn't know if he was gifting the ability to heal or if he was directly healing them.
Yeah, we don't find that out until we get to the tubes. That's when it's exposed that he's a gifter and he's killing people to keep other people alive. Ugh.
You know, like a
As you
crazy
do.
person. No, but it was such a... For me, that was part of just trying to figure out the mechanics of what is he? Because he was unlike anything else we had seen up until that
And like
point.
nobody knew what he was up until then.
And I loved that. Like, I just loved the inherent mystery of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Because he just makes it so scary that
Yeah.
the way he
And I-
heals is through other people.
I kept waiting for him to like kill more of the Reckoner group after he got their blood. Like he killed Abigail, but I kept waiting for him to be like mid-fight with them, just be like, well, you're going to drop and you're going to drop. And just, I kept waiting for that to happen.
Well, they got the
Thankfully
Deus
it
Ex
didn't.
Machina of the rings.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
the rings.
I have to talk. This is the difference between, I feel, Brandon setting up his universe around things. David going after Steelheart, it wasn't contrived. That was literally the setup for the entire story. Him being able to find the Reckoners wasn't contrived because that was, hinted at that this is the type of thing he does. And you just start going through, and there were no real coincidences with everything going on. However, in Lux, there's so many just coincidences that happen here. Like, it's what a coincidence that Lovestruck was dating Life Force. It's a huge coincidence that Wings Flare's entire, shtick is based around the fact that she doesn't play games, and that's how Zeph gets killed instead of captured. It's a huge coincidence that, it's a silver ring that is his weakness, and I just so happen to always carry a silver ring because of my brother, because this was my brother's ring.
School ring, yeah.
Oh, and it's a coincidence that we all decided to get them as a symbol for this. It felt to me like there was a lot of contrivance with how they got some of their solutions, which, because of how good the setup is in the beginning with explaining away their skills, and even just some of the more insane things like the
Scorch notes.
the coiler, with, hey, let's reverse it. We don't exactly know what it will do when we reverse it. And some of the ways that they come up with what a reversing does, I'm like, oh, that's a clever thing to do there. The sound snares reversal, where it reduces the or it makes things quieter. Okay, we can make a silence field. But then the guy who can see everything, and it reduces it down we could now put it on to paper.
Yeah, that is so cool.
That was the other thing. Some of it's Chekhov's guns. It hangs very obviously at the start. As soon as we got that tank, I'm like, if we don't end up using that tank by the end of the book,
we gotta use
be
it.
Pissed.
Yeah.
And as soon as they're like, okay, but there's a lot of spark notes, it's like, yes. Let it begin.
I didn't even think about that, but then they're like Martha, and I was like, oh wait, I have a guess as to what Martha is.
Martha.
Why did you say that name?
Dude, no. We're not doing that.
I still haven't even seen the DC stuff.
Guess
I've seen
what?
Aquaman, and that's it.
Just did.
Okay. Languish. I thought was well done. He was an interesting character.
Yeah.
He was a really interesting character.
Very much about this, like, I'm happy and content and I'm safe here. Except he wasn't really.
This is the guy who has the ability to nullify other epics' powers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's
we've seen before. This is a very, very potent ability in the presence of epics.
Yeah. What I liked was also, it wasn't just like just turning them off. It wasn't this
flip a switch,
Yeah, it wasn't a flip a switch thing. It was a dampening field, and it did it it did it kind of slowly.
But he could still target it.
Yeah, he could still target it. It was just one of those, this is an interesting version of, I've seen this before. This isn't some new thing, no one's ever come up.
It's in Heroes, it's in, X-Men.
It's in X-Men, it's everywhere. There's always a guy who can turn off someone's powers.
Yes.
Because otherwise it makes powers impossible to deal with. And to not have that.
And so it's just one of those things where it's like, I've seen this before. I haven't seen this before.
This version of it, yeah.
And it was interesting where, because you're like, oh, but he's trying to be a good person type of thing. That was the pages.
She kept thinking he's a good person. He's a good person.
And it's just like, no, he's not really a good person. Like, he is still an epic that is inherently selfish in some way. But
he's more passive, less aggressive.
Yeah. Well, and again, his abilities are more passive as well. It's not a weapon. Like, it's used as a weapon, but he sees himself
the shield.
Almost, he sees himself almost more as the tool that Life Force aims.
Yeah. And they'd had a disagreement or an argument like a couple years before, and so I'm sure there was a change in how much freedom he had. And then there was also Life Force making sure that Languish thought that he couldn't dampen him, too.
How do you fake that? How do you trick him into that?
I don't know.
It's because he injected him into it, and I think part of it is he's also a little bit lazy with it. Because the thing is, how would you, if you were in his shoes, you're like, well, I don't believe him. I'm going to test this out. As soon as you test it out.
That's right. He also does know, because remember when he dampens him and ends up, reopening his own wounds.
Yeah, and so it's the whole, so it's the whole, the Jenga tower.
Yeah.
He actually wasn't fooled. He knew, but he also knew his own life was on the line.
Yeah, and that was the real thing, was he knew it would be a selfless sacrifice.
Death sentence, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to sort of push him. As soon as he realizes that, I'm never getting my creature comforts again. Well, all right, I guess I'm going with you guys. Let's burn this mother down.
Yeah.
So I realized we've moved on to the epics. We did skip one Reckoner that we didn't talk about. What do y'all think of Wade?
I love Wade.
I always love the computer geeks and the things. They're just always fun. And his voice was so fun.
He was interesting. Well, yeah, first off, again, bravo to McLeod Andrews, because it's amazing that he was able to get so many Texas accents in, but they all felt genuine, but they were all distinct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and as someone who's from Texas, there's definitely different styles of Texas accent. East Texas is different from West Texas, is different from the Panhandle.
Yeah. As somebody originally from Alabama, I'm in a similar boat. It's just yeah.
And then there's me from the Pacific Northwest who's like, I know it's Southern. I can tell little bits, but I know that I don't know them as well as you guys would.
They were all very distinct, and they all felt very real. It was really cool.
Well, it's one of my favorite things with voice actors is when they can do that. Like, what's the name of the voice actor who does Name of the Wind?
I can't remember, but
One of the things I really appreciated about him was he would do two characters from the same country. They would have the same accent, but they wouldn't have the same voice, which is a hard thing to pull off. I like the Stormlight Archive books, but it's clear that oh my goodness, why am I blanking on names today? The guy Michael Kramer in particular. He has about a rotation of about 10 voices that he has that he can do reliably, because his Sadius is very similar to his
Ellicar.
And you hear it, you're like, this is kind of the same voice, you just say it at slightly different volumes. But this, he has a full,
all those different names. Yeah.
And I love the debate about is sherbet and ice cream.
Sherbet, yes, sherbet and ice cream. And then they end up with just sherbet.
All they have, because it's a metaphor for hell as far as Herschel is concerned.
But he takes it because he's like, this is better than nothing.
Nick Podell is the voice actor for Name of the Wind.
That's what it is, yeah.
But yeah, no, Wade is just...
I love Wade.
He starts off so obnoxious and whiny, and it's just like, oh no, are we going to get another one of these?
Oh no.
But
he shapes up, yeah.
He shapes up physically as well, because he has to do some training with them. And they're just like, we're not taking you along if you can't carry your weight. So
yeah.
Literally in the case of the climbing.
Yeah, and they let him set the pace, which is smart to let, if you go too slow, then everybody goes too slow.
Speaking of the climbing, what did y'all think of what's his name's Peric's fate?
That was
where they put him 3/4 of the way down the ladder, and they said, "Hey, if you're strong, you'll be able to make it back up.
You could make it back up." But I'm like, you kind of had that coming, dude.
To which the thing is, Paige was like, "No, we're not going to kill him. We're not going to kill him." And then I just love the idea that Herschel's just sort of like, I'm not going to let him kill him. I'm not fine. Paige, we won't kill him. However, if karmic justice comes, we will not stand in the way of karmic justice, right?
We'll give it a little nudge too and make sure that it's extra hard. But
we're not going to kill him. We're just going to strap him to the side of a building and see if the Stormfather decides to spare his life.
I'm going to start spinning my arms in the air, and if you get hit, it's your own fault. It was very rules lawyery with what Paige wanted, but at the same time, it's not like he didn't deserve it.
Oh, it was clear poetic justice. It's one of those things where you love it and feel bad for loving it.
Yeah.
Well, especially just how insufferable he became.
Oh, yeah. Like, he's just like, well, if you're not going to kill me, then I have no need to do. It's just like, okay, we ain't going to kill you.
He is wrong genre savvy.
Yeah.
He thinks he's fun. It's like, no, buddy. You're gonna have some issues.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a character we need to talk a little bit more about. Lovestruck. First off, her
she's interesting. I'll go ahead if you had something first.
The fact that she came back. And that's an odd little connection. That is a bit of a coincidence, I think, like you were talking about, Jordan. But
I kept thinking that she was going to be Wing Flare, and that Wing Flare.
I did too.
I kept thinking, okay, it's going to be her, and then nope, two different people.
That something had happened to Wing Flare to shift her over, because she
learned new powers or something, you know.
Well, they didn't behave anything like one another at all.
Yeah. No, they don't. Like, the other interesting thing is I will randomly through social media and stuff run into stories about women who will snub guys for things that I'm like, really? You're going to insist that he gets you a giant rock, that if you lose it or break it, how expensive is that? And all these other things. And if you like big jewelry, that's totally cool. I like pretty jewelry too, but I wear a silicone ring because I will break it or something. Anyway, so I just thought it was interesting that I'm like, oh, they're putting in that stereotype of a woman in for her. And I'm like, I can see, yeah, that would definitely break somebody pretty horribly.
Yeah.
So anyway. That was
well, especially with the way that Calamity seems to sort of like giving power to these types, to the more, he either wants to break someone who's really virtuous,
good,
or he gives it
like
to people who are petty tyrants.
Yeah.
And
and then it's like, no,
before they got it.
You got to do it to level 100 instead of just being
obliteration.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's gosh.
She was scary.
That said, well, and once she became Lovestruck, she's just going around killing people for the giggles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, she's flirty and she
kills them by blowing a kiss at them. That's just
That said, her fate. Oh my gosh, Life Force he's a sociopath. He's psychotic.
Well, and the thing that's so scary about him is when you first meet him, I do first have that thought of he's a gifter. He might be in control and sort of justifying this to himself. And then you actually get it, from his perspective. You're like, oh no, okay, misread the situation. He's just really good at faking it.
Yeah, well, he's just very, very cold. Like, and it's interesting because he is fighting against something, similar to the way Prof does.
Mm-hmm.
Except his seems a little more.
There's something else. Like, it feels like
it's a thing. It's not a darkness. It's a thing.
It's venom.
It's a thing, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the symbiote that he's a parasite, a demon, he calls it, and honestly, that's what it feels like.
I kept thinking it was just like his dark calamity-ness.
That's what I did too.
Same thing until he injected it. It was like.
Well, it was when he said that like it took over when he would try to take on the third set of powers, that I was like, wait. That didn't happen with Prof. That didn't happen with Steel. That didn't happen with the other epics. Something's up with this demon thing that he's talking about, and.
But even with that, I thought he might just have like some sort of super specific form of schizophrenia or something.
It's very possible too.
And so, but one like that's I was like maybe it's and then as soon as it once Paige has it in her, it's just sort of like no,
there's something else.
I keep hoping they can find a dialysis machine and maybe get it out that way, but she can't talk about it, which is so messed up.
No, it's. That was such a downer ending.
I know.
Like,
And it's
before the epilogue, everything's just like, okay, I'm ready to be
great.
done. Walk away.
Nope.
And then the epilogue comes and it's just like, why? Why did you do this? I'm listening to this, finishing it at 1 a.m. I don't want this in my head at 1 a.m.
Because I mean, you end Calamity with like, oh, okay. I mean, there's still evil epics out there, but they're not being forced to be evil anymore, and there's people who can be good now, and
there's so much hope.
There's so much hope, and then this one, it's like, nope.
Well, it's just the way Steelheart ended, which is the first in the series, like this one. It ends on the high note. It ends on the cinematic note. This would be like if mitosis had been attached to the end of Steelheart. Which, by the way, okay, the coiler on mitosis, and let's put it with a sword.
That's so.
We're gonna divide by 0.
Divide, because it's a sword. Divide. That just sounds,
Cloudbreaker was funny. I liked how she totally sounded like a Valley girl. Kind of like it's gonna do the frost now.
She just sort of, like, they talked about her. She barely showed up. It was interesting.
I know. She's just at the very end.
This is, again, it feels like there was supposed to be another book.
Well, I feel like
which I end up keep saying about these books. It feels like there's supposed to be another book.
I want more.
I'm wondering if this book is a setup for when he eventually does do the Apocalypse Guard. Because they are still planning on doing it. It started getting really weird. They mentioned, and so, but I'm wondering if this has something to, like, this will be some sort of tie-in with that, or it's because
I don't know.
There's obviously more to this story. You don't end on that kind of cliffhanger and be like, in the end.
Plus, I just know that I looked on the Coppermind and it shows that it was supposed to be 3, and then it was changed to just 1. The novel is intended to stand alone. It has some time overlap with the previous Reckoner's books, but reading them is not a prerequisite. So, I mean, it makes me think that for now, he's not announcing anything else about it. And so I'm kind of going, this could be where
I think
he
the
leaves
reason
it.
they're not announcing anything is because this is sort of an experiment. Because this is audio only as of now. And so I think, and this is the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon's done a full novel crossover with someone. Not crossover, co-writing.
It is.
Well, because I mean, he did do Apocalypse Guard, but that hasn't been printed yet.
But it hasn't been published.
It's still
So my gut tells me
some novellas coming. Yeah.
My gut tells me they did not want to commit to anything beyond just this experiment, and they're going to see how it sells, and they're going to see how the writing process was, and do they want to do it again?
Sort of like Mistborn.
Yeah.
And I know the next Cytonic short story. The first one is coming out like tomorrow.
It is tomorrow.
The 28th, yeah. So they're doing more of those. Yeah, Skyward. Cytonic. I think it's supposed to be Cytonic is what the series is called.
No, Cytonic is the third. It's the Cytoverse is what they're calling it.
Cytoverse. Okay, I was like, I knew they were going off of that word.
But Cytonic is the third book.
I need to finish the
as a series. Book. As a series, a lot of people are referring to it as the Skyward series. Brandon calls it Skyward. Brandon calls Cytonic, he calls that Skyward 3.
Yeah, it's just the Cytoverse threw me. That I was like, oh, well, it's supposed to be that. Lots of words.
Yeah. Sort of like the Cosmere is the world, the universe.
Reckoners.
Yeah, even though none of them are called Reckoners, but that's just what the series is called, yeah.
Yeah, this book, I'm so conflicted on it so many times. Just because there are so many good things in it, and then there are just things in it as well that I'm like, this kind of takes me out of it. This doesn't fit. This is rushed. This is...
Honestly, part of me feels like what we're seeing there is some of the seams between Brandon and... I can never remember the co-author's name.
Is it Michael?
Yeah. Bohls. Like part of me wonders if that's kind of what we're seeing is the seams where they don't quite, they haven't been totally smoothed out.
Yeah, sort of like when you're in an unfinished level, or you get a little beyond the boundaries in a video game, where you start to see, oh, this isn't this robust world. It's a video game.
Yeah.
And
it's like, yeah.
So, but there's so many good set pieces in here, and the coop being one of the best training montages I've seen in anything I've ever read, which
Absolutely.
is including everything Brandon's done. The coop is done so well.
Yeah, like this is a montage, a training montage that I'm like, wow, this is actually I could do this longer. Whereas usually you're like, let's move on. I'm kind of done with this. Whereas this was interesting pretty much the whole way.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and like just so much of it comes, it's the setting, it's the dynamic between Jax and Paige, Zeph. Like Zeph was phenomenal. He was absolutely phenomenal as a character. And also his connection to Abigail. They've got a little romance thing going on.
Yeah.
And
that was cute.
Him dying changes her.
That was, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those weird things that I always love it whenever they do it. I love it when they show older couples in stories. I don't know why. It just always endears me to the story overall.
It's a very different kind of love than like Jax and Paige, because theirs is they won't admit they like each other until like way through it, versus an adult who's like, no, I know this is what I have and what is available, and it's just mature romance versus young love kind of type.
Yeah,
and it's very different.
It's also a lot more of a companionship. Like it's not just driven by teenage hormone urges. It's just like they know each other, they trust each other.
Yeah, there's no
don't
desperation to the love.
Which, don't get me wrong, Jax and Paige have that trust. I mean, it was
deep,
forged into them. But it's a very different, mature, weathered, comfortable type of relationship.
Because I mean, I'm imagining that Zeph is not her kid, because she said that she had a kid, daughter. Abigail. Abigail said she had a daughter when she talks about something about her past.
You mean he wasn't the father of her daughter?
Yes, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, I was like,
so I'm guessing
this
is
does not sound.
No, sorry, I'm guessing that he is not the father.
This is not a Texas stereotype that we're trying to put forward.
No, I was not. No. Anyway, but just it's her second relationship or third or however many, and so she's got what her expectations and everything else. Anyway, so mature love is different than teenage love.
I also just love Zeph, who's just he is leather made into a person. And then she comes by and he brightens up. It's just like, aw, the Tin Man does cute. Have a heart.
It's like, aw. Yeah, I did.
It's genuinely cute.
Yeah, I did dislike that in my head, at least. I knew that Herschel and Zeph were different, but since they never got to interact with each other, they kind of became the same role for me a little bit.
I could see the overlap. I saw. It wasn't as big a thing for me.
Yeah, like and I knew they were different people, but like my brain was like, oh well, obviously, and I'm like, wait, no, that was Zeph, not Herschel. And so as I got further, and it didn't help that I was listening to it in like random sporadic bursts because I had to go do other things, and so I would listen for like an hour there, an hour here, 2 hours there, and so I had bigger gaps and random spots that probably threw me too.
Also, the fact that they had the flash, or not. That all of the Coop stuff was a flashback and that Herschel showed up at the beginning. And so all of the Zeph stuff is between Herschel.
Yeah. So it makes it even weirder that I'm like, wait, no, that was Herschel. Yeah. Okay, this is Zeph. This is Herschel.
No,
so
did we talk about Zeph putting everything in his peg leg?
You mean
Herschel?
Or Herschel. Dang
They're different.
You keep doing it. See, I wasn't having an issue till we had this conversation.
I'm sorry.
No, I love that he just carries everything in it.
Yeah, I loved the leg. It was awesome.
Well, okay, and I love the scene where they get there and they start scanning him, and he's like, "Well, you might have an issue here." And I don't know. I think back to every moment, when I was working a retail job when. So I worked at a gas station and someone's like, hey, can I do this? And they have some weird specific situation where they want to pay with a check, a card, and cash. And I'm like, I wasn't trained for this. I don't know. And I just love, they're just sitting here.
What do we do with the metal
We really
leg?
didn't expect someone with one leg to be able to make it up here. We're going to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're all like standing in a circle
Herschel.
going like, I don't know what to do. So then Paige comes and saves them.
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't know it was Paige when she showed up, but I was like, that's got to be someone they know. I don't know who it is, but it's got like it didn't occur to me that it could be Paige. But I was
Aren't you
really
a little
relieved.
short to be a raven?
So I don't know,
for
read you guys the same. When they're like, Paige is dead, I'm just like, we didn't see a body. She's alive. I don't believe it.
I took it as like, I accepted it, but I was not happy about it. So when she came back, I was like, oh, good. Oh, she's not
Yeah.
dead. But I was worried that she was turned or something,
I did-
double
yeah,
agent a
I was
little
worried that she
bit.
was a traitor. Particularly,
I think
particularly because of the way that his powers worked. Or just, you could tell there's something creepy about the ravens.
Yeah. No, what kind of made me suspicious a little bit longer was that the voice actor, he kept her very monotone, kind of, I felt like. And so that made me feel like she was keeping the ravenness, and it felt off to me.
I was a bit worried, but
I like the idea of, as you're trying to build your stormtrooper army, the idea that they always have those what are clearly like broken knives or whatever that are always sticking out of their uniforms to highlight how
Hardcore
immortal they are. And then on top of it, I love the idea of the voice changer, so that every raven seems like the same one.
oh yeah,
It's
the faceless stormtrooper.
Yeah, it's a good way to make your Roman Legion, Nazi Germany, Communist Russia knockoff army, make it feel much more distinct beyond just, oh, they're all match and vaguely evil.
And it takes away their humanity and everything else too, like it does with stormtroopers. And so anybody who sees the army is going to go, oh no, it's this army of monsters almost, even though they know they're probably not monsters, but they do rise from the dead every time. So it just adds to that otherness of them. And it also keeps them from probably forming as close of relationships with each other too.
It's interesting because we do see two people who later become them. It's almost the reverse of, I don't want to get too much into it, but like the reverse of Finn from the Star Wars sequels.
Yeah.
Where it humanizes the faceless horde.
Yeah.
But I feel like this did a better job of it and part of it is because they're two characters that we knew before it happened.
Yeah. So we have more
rather than-
context.
Rather than the reverse.
This was another one that was just sort of like, you guys aren't good at being villains. So she goes on this rampage with a sword, and that's how they, we're going to put you in our ranks. Did no one ever think to say, where did you study the blade? Like, we don't find too many katana wielders in the middle of north central Texas.
So where did you learn this so we can go scoop all them up?
Jordan, we don't find them now. This is in the future. Who knows?
I mean, unless this is going to be some sort of China Grove thing where the sheriff and his buddies go around with samurai swords, I don't think it's going to happen.
Listen, maybe anime explodes in a strange way in Texas.
Okay,
in the future. We don't
Funimation
know.
is based in Fort Worth, so...
Oh, man.
In the future, when Funimation takes over all industry, okay, maybe just everyone's just playing with samurai swords.
We find out that Dean Nighthawk's actual last name is Funimation, and there's the weird...
Curse you, John Funimation! I don't think that's his real last name.
Who knows? We'll never know. But yeah, just crazy, crazy stuff going on. We love hearing from our listeners, so keep on sending us questions. You can ask us about the Cosmere. You can drop us your ideas for topics you'd like us to discuss during the show. And while you're at it, we would love to hear your feedback about how you think we're doing. If you have an interesting theory that you want us to talk about, if you have a topic that you want us to do an episode on, send it in to us at cosmerestudies@gmail.com in a brief, concise email. Hopefully we could either read that as part of the show, or if it's an interesting enough topic, we can make a full episode out of it. We do have a P.O. Box as well. That's the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, P.O. Box 970063, Orem, Utah 84097. We also have our own personal projects. I'll actually go ahead and start us out on this time. I've got another podcast with my friend Dylan. We talk about board games. It's called The Innkeeper's Table, and new episodes come out Friday morning. So our most recent episode that came out Friday was we talk about game night and the different group sizes for if you're hosting a game night. So like if you're just having a couple buddies over, or if you want to have a big group to play a party game, if you want to have a really big group and split off and play multiple games, we talk about the pros and cons of each of those. And then the next episode coming up is titled, I Enjoyed Yahtzee. What should I play next? And it's pretty much what it says on the tin. I do have several board game reviews up over on www.innkeeperstable.com, and I occasionally post about games on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at InnkeepersTable. Jordan, how about you? What do you got going on?
You can always find me, twitch.tv/splice stream. We streamed the most recent Nintendo Direct, and for those who missed it, they announced that on October 5th is going to be the reveal of the last Smash fighter for Smash Ultimate. And for me, this is a very big deal. We'll be streaming that live, so if you're interested in that, definitely come to twitch.tv/splice stream. We'll live react to that. But the big thing I'm still pushing, and really need your help, guys. Even if you aren't interested in playing, if you can show up on Thursday nights for my Amiibo Raid Boss Tower night, starting at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, it'd be a huge help. I think, though, if you're even halfway interested in Smash, you should try it out at least once, because it's fun to see how the computers are going to murder us eventually, but probably not, because
punishing.
Amiibo are inconsistent at best.
Jordan, you forgot the other announcement from the Nintendo Direct. Chris Pratt and Jack Black are going to play opposite each other as Mario and Bowser in the movie.
The internet
Jack
has
Black
already...
is Bowser?
Yes. And so there are two reactions to all this, and they're that, and everyone's just sort of like, what, did America just get to cast everything? And
Chris Pratt?
It is weird. The Seth Rogen is Donkey Kong. I can't help but think of him as anything other than a dumb giant gorilla, so it does kind of fit. But the Donkey Bong jokes make themselves.
I just like Bowser, so that's
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like there's been a lot of boo yay with everyone's reactions to this, and everyone just being like, "What?
I have no idea how I feel.
What is this film?" Because we also have no plot synopsis, and so everyone is just sort of, "What are they doing?" Because no one has any clue. Personally, I'm hoping for like Lego Movie, but Nintendo. But that might just be because Chris Pratt's playing Mario, and so that's the first thing my brain goes to.
It's me, Star-Lord. Amy, how about you? What can we find you up to lately?
So my Facebook is Coincidence Cosplay and Props. My Twitter is @CoincidenceCosp because my name is too long. My Instagram is @coincidence_cosplay. And my two websites are www.coincidencecosplay.com and etsy.com/shop/coincidencecosplay. And my husband's website is deckplan.io if you want to do any Magic the Gathering deck building. So FanX, which is Salt Lake's convention, was this last weekend, so I still have a bunch of pictures I need to put up because I'm really good at taking pictures, but then I'm terrible at putting them up on my Instagram and stuff. But yeah, so I've been doing a lot of that, and I was a Twi'lek and my Mistborn, and I was a Loki variant, and I got to, so if you guys know anything about cinema therapy, I got to take a picture with them, and Alan C. Wright wanted a picture with me as Vin, so that was pretty freaking awesome. Anyway, so that was my squeeing moment, but that was really cool. So I got to be there for they filmed an episode there, so that was pretty
Did you
cool.
make it to Brandon's signing?
I did. I got a book signed, so you guys have to keep listening for such things in the future. So I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff around my house because I've been ignoring those things, but I will find interesting things to put up on my Instagram and stuff. So yes, that is me.
Cool. Awesome. For our listeners who want to support the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, but you cannot become patrons, we would love it if you would just tell your friends about the show. Spread the word. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, to like and subscribe over on youtube.com/Cosmere Studies. And if you've got nice things to say about us, go ahead and toss us a good review wherever you listen to us, whether that's YouTube or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. We'd appreciate that too. Okay, guys. Final thoughts on Lux.
It's
I
a
wish there
scary
were more
place.
books.
There's got to be more. I think there's got to be more.
I
I
would love
wish
a dialysis machine to fix the problem. That would be just hilarious to me. I know it's not going to be used that way, but it would be hilarious.
I mean,
What's
but
to fix the problem?
dialysis
that-
machine, since Death Rise is apparently transferred through
in
blood,
the
she wants
blood?
to filter them out.
Oh, right.
Just do a dialysis machine and filter them out. It'll be fine. It'll totally be fine.
I mean, it's one of you suggested, and I'm like, I don't know that wouldn't work.
Unless he hides in an organ or something. But, I don't know. Anyway.
We
seems
knew it.
like
He's
a
in the
smart idea.
appendix. He's in the appendix. That's what it was for the entire time. We knew it would be used for evil.
I keep getting mad every time I realize it's not Las Vegas. I feel like Lux should be Las Vegas. I don't know. Anyway, special thanks to our patron producer, Mim's Laundry Service. We smooth your clothes to soothe our souls. In addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, listeners can find our videos on YouTube or audio versions of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile @Cosmere Studies. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions for the show, email them to cosmerestudies@gmail.com. In our next episode, we are going to be heading back to Roshar to take a look at the ins and outs of Sprin society. How does Sprin interact with each other when left to their own devices in Shadesmar? So join us for the live recording on October 11th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern at www.twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table. Until then, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember,
There's
There's
always
always
another
another
secret.
secret.